Welcome back, everyone, to Chapter 3 of our Explainer series. Today, we're finally tackling the enigma that literally just won't sink. Yep, we're talking about the legendary Bermuda Triangle. Just imagine it. You're soaring through absolutely clear blue skies, or maybe you're cutting through calm ocean waves, and then you vanish, without a single trace. For decades now, this notorious patch of the Atlantic has totally baffled scientists, it's inspired countless storytellers, and honestly, it's terrified more than a few sailors. So let's dive right into the whole shebang, the facts, the fiction, and the undeniably fascinating science behind these disappearances. So I've got to ask you all, what do you actually think is going on here? Are these missing ships and planes just falling victim to nature's completely unpredictable mood swings? Or is there something else out there? Something far more mysterious, maybe even entirely unexplainable, lurking right there in the dark waters of the Devil's Triangle. You know, it's a question that has sparked I don't even know how many debates, and to really answer it, we need to look at both sides, the wild, legendary myths, and, of course, the hard, grounded science. All right, to kick things off, let's ground this legend in a bit of reality. The Bermuda Triangle is basically a loosely defined region right in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean. The general consensus is that its three corners are Miami, Florida, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and the island of Bermuda. But here's where it gets kind of crazy. There's literally no universally agreed upon boundary. Honestly, depending on whose story you're reading, the total area can shift wildly. We're talking anywhere from 500,000 to over 1.5 million square miles. But you know, regardless of where you draw the exact lines, it's the history of what happens inside them that really captures our attention. Now, the lore itself is anchored by some truly massive, headline-grabbing losses over the years. Back in 1881, we have the alleged incident of the Ellen Austin, where a derelict ship reportedly just vanished into thin air. Then, jump to 1918, the USS Cyclops, this massive Navy supply ship, disappears without a trace, and it took a staggering 306 crew members down with it. Think about that for a second. Later, in 1921, the Carroll A. Deering was found completely abandoned ghost ship style. And then, probably the most famous of all, in 1945, Flight 19. That was a whole group of 5 Navy bombers that vanished during what was supposed to be a totally routine training mission. When you really step back and look at it, the sheer historical density of these events is staggering. From massive cargo ships like the Cotopaxi, straight through to modern aircraft, the incredible variety of lost vessels practically demanded an explanation. The public was absolutely captivated. I mean, human nature just craves answers, right? Especially when the unknown feels this looming and this remarkably persistent. And as you might expect, that desperation for answers led to some truly incredible theories. One of the absolute wildest comes from the psychic Edgar Cayce. He claimed that the triangle is situated right smack above the sunken, lost continent of Atlantis. Yeah, Atlantis. According to his theory, the ancient Atlanteans used this massive, cylindrical prism called the Tu'o'oi stone or firestone to power their entire civilization. It supposedly had this movable capstone to direct energy. Cayce's claim is that these sunken, damaged power crystals are actually still down there on the ocean floor, periodically surging and triggering mysterious materializations, or simply just destroying our modern navigational instruments. Okay, but maybe ancient Atlantean crystals aren't exactly your speed. Well, how about a literal tear in the fabric of space and time? Proponents of the time vortex theory suggest the Bermuda Triangle is this rare place where reality itself warps, and there are actually some really eerie, chilling accounts from pilots out there. They claim they flew into these strange, swirling clouds only to emerge in completely different locations in an impossibly short amount of time. Basically, the argument here is that the triangle is a gateway, like a portal to a parallel universe, or another dimension where our normal rules of physics simply go out the window. Of course, we absolutely cannot talk about alternative theories without bringing up the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Yep, aliens. Some folks argue that extraterrestrials use the triangle as a sort of cloaked entry point to our planet. Now, why there? Well, according to Space.com, NASA actually found that the Earth's magnetic field is significantly weaker near the South Atlantic anomaly. Supporters of the alien theory suggest that extraterrestrials are deliberately utilizing this quote-unquote dent in our magnetic field to avoid interference with their highly sensitive navigation systems. So when a plane suddenly plunges into the ocean, these theorists ask, was it just bad luck, or was it an interception? All right, we've had our fun with the supernatural. Now it's time for our classic Scooby-Doo debunk moment. Let's pull the mask right off this monster.
On one side, we've got the paranormal view, fueled by Atlantis, time warps, and aliens. Super exciting, right? But on the flip side, we have the rigorous, grounded, scientific view. See, oceanographers and meteorologists have looked at the exact same list of disappearances and found that the real culprits are, well, far more earthly. We're talking about the Gulf Stream, incredibly violent weather, and good old-fashioned human error.
So let's break down these natural forces. For starters, the weather in this specific region is notoriously erratic. It's prone to violent, sudden downdrafts that can literally swat a small plane right out of the sky. Boom, gone. Then you factor in the Gulf Stream. This is a swift, incredibly powerful ocean current running right through the heart of the triangle. If a crash does happen, this current can sweep wreckage miles away in a matter of hours, which explains perfectly why so many things vanish without a trace. Add in local compass variations that can seriously confuse navigators, along with regular, everyday human misjudgment, and suddenly the whole mystery starts to look a lot more like a series of tragic, but entirely explainable accidents. But wait, there is actually one specific scientific hypothesis that bridges the gap between natural phenomena and these crazy sudden disappearances. It's called the methane gas theory. Researchers over at Purdue University set up this totally fascinating scaled model experiment. They wanted to test a very specific fluid dynamics concept, namely, could an enormous bubble of methane gas rising from the ocean floor actually sink a ship? So they set up a massive tank with large bubble generators just to see exactly what happens when the water right beneath a vessel is suddenly aerated. And here is the exact step-by-step physics of this methane threat. It all starts when pockets of methane gas, which are trapped in icy seafloor formations called clathrates, suddenly erupt. Boom! As these massive gas bubbles rush up to the surface and mix with the water, they radically reduce the ocean's overall density in that specific spot. And since ships rely on water density for buoyancy, any vessel unlucky enough to be caught directly above this blowout instantly loses its ability to float. It literally drops to the seafloor like a rock. In a split second, a ship is basically swallowed whole by the ocean. By using specialized bubble generators in that controlled tank environment, the researchers proved that this sudden loss of buoyancy is a very real fluid dynamics phenomenon. Now, to be fair, we don't know for absolute sure how often this occurs naturally in the real world, but it provides a terrifying, yet completely natural explanation for a ship going under so incredibly fast that the crew wouldn't even have time to send out a distress signal. Ultimately, though, the crucial turning point in all of this really comes down to the exhaustive research of Larry Cush, who wrote The Bermuda Triangle Mystery Solved. Cush actually did the legwork. He went back and checked the historical records. And guess what? He found that a lot of the so-called mysteries were purely fictionalized incidents traced back to exaggerated books. For instance, remember that 1881 Ellen Austen incident we mentioned earlier? Yeah, he found absolutely zero mention of it in any 1880 or 1881 newspapers. None. Furthermore, major insurance companies, like Lloyd's of London, show zero statistical difference in crash or sinking rates inside the triangle, compared to literally any other heavily traveled region of the ocean.
So, what's the bottom line here? The official consensus is incredibly clear. Authoritative bodies like the U.S. Coast Guard and NOAA state plainly, there is zero evidence to support supernatural causes. The triangle is a highly trafficked area. And unfortunately, where you have lots and lots of ships and planes, combined with treacherous weather and the unpredictable Gulf Stream, you are going to have accidents. The true culprits are undeniably human error, natural forces, and, let's be honest, media sensationalism.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. If the science is this clear, if the statistics absolutely show the Bermuda Triangle is no more dangerous than any other busy stretch of ocean, why do we hold on to the legends so tightly? Why do we prefer the sensational myth of time portals and Atlantean crystals over the grounded scientific truth? Well, maybe it's just human nature. I think we all have this deep instinctual desire to believe that the world is still a little wild, still full of magic and unsolved mysteries. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, always keep questioning the world around you.